if you are a parent of a struggling reader, you probably want them to be able to read something like this. This is a great book, by the way, if you haven't read it. A big chapter book, lots of words, lots of pages. You want them to feel successful with it, but they can hardly read something like this. So I want to share some things that they need to be able to do in order to go from sounding out every word to this to eventually this, because it can happen for struggling readers. Now, the first thing I want to say is that about 20% of the population, no matter what type of reading instruction they get, whether it's good or bad, they're going to be able to read something like this, no problem. Okay, that's the lucky 20%. You may be one of those lucky 20%ers who, no matter what type of reading instruction, you were just going to be a reader, no problem. Now, the other portion of the population, a couple different categories. The majority fall into the you need explicit, systematic instruction, specifically with phonics. Now, if you are up to date on the reading wars that are currently going on, you know that there is a big push right now to use evidence-based learning and using the science of reading to really drive the curriculums that school districts adopt and train teachers on. And in the past, that there's a lot of school districts who are still not using the evidence-based approaches to teaching reading. So if you get the correct instruction, obviously you're going to be able to read. Now, a smaller percentage, they're really going to struggle. They need maybe up to 200 repetitions of a reading skill in order to get proficient at it. So your kid's going to fall into one of those categories. It is a wide spectrum. But if you're watching this video, your kid is probably in that middle section. So they may sound out every word. They read really slowly. They probably try and tell you, like, I hate reading. Reading's too hard. I don't want to do it. They're going to have those really resistant behaviors when it comes to sitting down and reading a book. And you're like, this isn't a big deal. And they throw a fit. They may say their stomach hurts or they don't want to go to school. All of those behaviors stem from the fact that reading is really hard. And it makes sense because our brains are not wired to read. Our brains are wired to speak and to hear language and to be able to interpret that. The spoken language has been around a lot longer than the written language. So our brains are not wired yet to be able to just look at words and be able to read them and comprehend them. So that's why parents of struggling readers come to me all the time and they say, I don't know how to help them. So in this video, I want to break down everything that needs to happen before your struggling reader can get to here. Okay, so the first thing that they need to be able to do is have something called strong phonemic awareness. Now, phonemic awareness is just simply the ability to hear and manipulate sounds in spoken words. So remember when I said that learning to read is not natural. It's not a natural thing for us to do. Speaking is a very natural thing for us to do. So this sounds like breaking apart sounds and words. So if you were to say, what's my word? Pig. They should be able to say pig or slip, slip. They should also be able to separate those sounds and words. So if you said to them, can you tell me the sounds in, why am I struggling to think of a word? In bat, they would have to be able to say b-at. So that is a simple way to think of phonemic awareness. There's nothing in front of them that they need to be able to look at. It's the ability to hear and manipulate those sounds, whether it's taking the sounds apart in a spoken word, putting them back together. And the more advanced skill is substituting sounds. So if you were to say at, cat. Okay, now instead of k, say b, then your child would have to say bat. So all of those skills, those phonemic awareness skills, are really, really, really important to reading. And this is something that I think is really simple to work on at home because you don't need a lot of time. You don't need a lot of materials. So you just need maybe a list of words that you want to quiz your child on, and that's it. Like, you can do it in the car going to and from school, to and from baseball practice, brushing teeth. Like, it's very easy to plug those really small activities in throughout the day. So another thing that struggling readers, well, and all readers need to be able to do is they need to be able to make the connection between letters and sounds. So this is often referred to as the alphabetic principle. So your child needs to see this. Yes, they need to know the name of it, but they need to know that A spells ah. They need to know s, t. They need to know all of those before they can look at a word and be able to blend sounds together. So a lot of times I see parents focusing on the letter names, singing the alphabet song, saying, what's that letter? And the child says S. Now, let me be clear. Those are not bad skills. What you want to focus on with your child is the sounds. So, s, at. Okay. Now, the good part about this is the next step, which is blending those sounds together. Your child doesn't need to know all of the letter sounds. So let's say your child knows s, at. You can make a few words with just these letter sounds. So if you put SAT together, you can show your child sat, that blending. So let's talk about blending for a second. I want you to think of this in stages, okay? So the first thing that they should be able to blend is simple words like that. So if you want to start with something like it, really short, it gives them practice of it, looking at each sound and blending them together. At. Then you can start building on sat, mit. Okay, so that's how we go from knowing a few letter sounds to being able to blend it together. So they need to be able to have the strong phonemic awareness. So like we were talking about earlier, hearing and manipulating sounds. Now they need to know the letter sound combination and then using that to read words, okay? So then once they can read words and they're pretty confident with that, then we need to think of sentences. How do we get them here? So a lot of times we like to just, oh, you can read a word, now read the sentence. For a lot of struggling readers, even this is overwhelming. So what we can do is instead of showing them the sentence, take some words out of it. So let's take not, for example. So we're going to pull that out of the sentence and just say, okay, tell me the sounds in not. Not. Great. Not. So you're going to see that word in this sentence. You're going to see the word not. This is what it looks like. Not. What does that word mean? So notice how I'm really focusing on one word at a time. You do not need to do it for every single one. That is one strategy, especially for some of those tricky words that you can use, is just taking that word out and just really dissecting it. So thinking about what it means, what it sounds like, so the sounds in the word, and then how it's spelled individually, maybe drawing a picture of it. That's a really great strategy to not only be able to read the word, but comprehend what's going on in the sentence. So again, we can take out specific words, tricky words that you think that they're struggling with. There's also a method that I like to call the ABC method. So A is for adult, B is for both, and C is for child. So what that looks like for something like this is you can say, I'm going to read this sentence. I want you just to follow along and listen as I read. Then the next time, you're going to read the sentence together. So at the same time. The third time, then the child reads it. So it's not about memorizing. It's just about making those more automatic connections between the written letter and the sound. So that's a really great strategy to be able to get your struggling reader reading more rather than just focusing on sight words, which I'm going to make a whole nother video about sight words and the problem that sight words create, or just focusing on sight words and memorizing sight words as a reading strategy. It's not a great reading strategy because we can't possibly memorize every single word that we will read. So that's why we have to know the alphabetic principle. Where was I going with that? So what parents of struggling readers need to know before they can get here is there's a lot of foundational skills that need to happen. And rushing here is just going to make your child really frustrated and really resistant, even more resistant to reading. So what I want you to do, if you have a struggling reader at home, talk to your child's teacher. Figure out exactly specifically which phonics skills that your child is stuck on. Then all of the strategies that I just talked about, then you can do it. Do they not know all of their letter sounds? Start there. Can they not blend together? Start there. Do they not know the something like this, cap? Maybe they are really good at reading that, but then when we add on that advanced phonics skill of that silent E on the end, and they don't read that as cape, that's something to start with. So your child's teacher should have a lot of specific information around which phonics skill your child is struggling with. If they don't, comment below and let me help you figure out exactly what your child struggles with. Again, there is a big war with reading curriculums right now. And parents, you don't need to really know the ins and outs of it, but what I do want you to know is to start thinking about how to get your child from here, maybe they're struggling with letter sounds, to where we want them to be, reading more fluently. And there's a lot of things that need to happen in order for that to be possible for your child. So again, if you have no idea what your child is struggling with or why they're struggling to read, comment below, especially if your child's teacher may not have time to spend with your child. Honestly, our school system is not really set up for success right now for every child. So I would love to be able to help you figure out exactly where they're getting stuck and exactly how to help them go to the next stage of their reading. So comment below. I would love to hear your experiences with your struggling reader. And I just love being able to help parents because honestly, parenting is hard enough. And parenting a child who is struggling to read, it seems impossible. But let me help you. I have a bunch of tools and tricks, especially for the most resistant readers. So comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I hope this was helpful.